Hello and welcome to this week's Bible study. I am very exhausted, but that's okay because I just ignore when I'm tired, and that's what we're gonna do now. As always, I like to start out with a deep breathing exercise. If you wouldn't mind taking 3 deep breaths with me. Starting now. I forgot to count them, but that's okay. I forgot to tell you to go in and then go out, but I'm gonna assume that you could just tell. Anyways, after the deep breathing exercise, I like to play a quiet worship song. However, copyright restrictions have inhibited my ability to be awesome. So instead of playing it here, you can either, if you're on Facebook, scroll down, or if you're on YouTube, then look in the description and there should be a link for a quiet worship song right there. And if you wouldn't mind, you can actually pause this video, go listen to that song, and you can continue the deep breathing. You can sway along to it, sing along to it, just reflect on the lyrics, whatever gets you into that meditative headspace. Go ahead and do that, and then when you're done, come on back here and we can do the Bible study. Sound like a plan? Okay, cool. Good time to pause this video to do that would be right now. And you're back. Hope you liked it. I was debating it, honestly, but I was like, yeah, it's close enough. I'm kind of wishing I did like a everything, I could do anything with because God kind of a song, but it's too late now. We're sticking with these songs. Anyways, before we get into the Bible study, let's do this pre-written prayer that I do every time we do the Bible study. Hey God, thank you for bringing us all here tonight. Please guide my tongue and heart during this teaching, and guide everyone during the discussion and prayer time. Help us to be a reflection of your light by enlightening us to your ways with love, patience, and curiosity. We love you, God. Help us to love each other like you love us. In your name we pray. Amen. Fantastic. Whew. Okay. So, we're trying out a new Bible translation known as Contemporary English Version, or CEV. CEV was published in 1995, which is my birth year, fun fact. But it is based on research starting in 1984 by biblical scholar Dr. Barclay Newman. He wanted to make a faithful translation that a non-church-going child could understand. Hundreds of people in the scholarly community helped research things like magazines and newspapers to compare cadence to. This translation leans slightly towards paraphrasing for the sake of simplicity, but does its best to be as accurate as possible to the original text. So more thought for thought than word for word. The only real political choice that stands out about this translation is it will use gender-neutral terms for humanity, but not for God. Translations like these are great for beginners, but not as much for the higher levels that really want to dig into each original word and meaning. Personally, I can't really get mad at anything that's been simplified, so let's see how the CEV handles Genesis 41, which starts out with, I'm reading off of my laptop, which is very old, and it is very bad at existing, and it will crash for any reason. Like literally, it is frozen because I want to scroll down and I have 4 tabs open and it doesn't want to do nothing. And now we wait. I believe in you, laptop. Please ignore the fact that I plan on replacing you for my birthday, which is coming up, by the way, in like 3 days. So you should give me money for that. Some people already said they'd give me $500 between them. So if I had like 3 more, then I could easily buy a tablet right now. Like right now I could do it. But such is my life right now. It's also annoying because when I stopped recording in the van, I got kind of excited. I was like, cool, I can finally like edit these videos, because it's so hard to edit videos on your phone. I can just do it on my laptop, but you can't do anything on this laptop. You can barely surf the internet on this laptop. It is not good. So this whole thing is going to be on the video, uncut, just gonna be there for that. So that's great. When I watch this later, I'm gonna be like, yep, this is how long it took for the laptop to stop being annoying. Okay. I might have to pause every now and then because the laptop froze again, just so you know, okay? But it gave me a little bit. So Genesis 41 starts out with, 2 years later, the king of Egypt dreamed he was standing beside the Nile River. Suddenly, 7 fat, healthy cows came up from the river and started eating grass along the bank. Then 7 ugly, skinny cows came up out of the river and ate the fat, healthy cows. When this happened, the king woke up. Jesus. It froze. It's still frozen. So that's cool. That's so cool. The king went back to sleep and had another dream. This time, 7 full heads of grain were growing on a single stalk. Later, 7 other heads of grain appeared when they were thin and scorched by a wind from the desert. The thin heads of grain swallowed the 7 full heads. Again, the king woke up, and it had only been a dream. The next morning, the king was upset. He called in his magicians and wise men and told them what he had dreamed. None of them could tell him what the dreams meant. So, none of them could tell him what the dreams meant. That was the end of the verse. We were really going by the seat of our pants there. But luckily it looks like the laptop is warmed up on this page, so hopefully it doesn't freeze again. So, like how a layperson reads the Bible and needs a scholar to explain the deeper meanings, Pharaoh needs a spiritual person to explain the deeper meanings of this dream, which we'll soon clearly see God had sent to him. Some people might write it off as just a dream, but something deep in Pharaoh's gut, probably God, told him this is something to pay attention to. That's why it's always important to at least consider your gut feelings. They're usually onto something. And if you're wondering why God sent 2 very similar dreams, it may have been to show how both plants, I told you I'm tired. It may have been to show how both plants and animals would be affected, but more likely it was simply for emphasis, especially in those days. If something was important enough and required immediate action or understanding, you'd use repetition to get that point across. That's why you often hear Jesus say, "Truly, truly, I say to you," before saying something of great weight, like how a scientist needs the same result a few times in order to confirm its validity. It's also a bit of an already but not yet kind of foreshadowing from the baker and wine guy who also had two similar dreams. One was set free and the other was hanged. So it can be assumed that depending on how Pharaoh handles this information, it will either mean destruction or rescue. But Pharaoh can't find anyone who can make sense of the data from the dream. God sent the dream, so only a follower of God can interpret it. The people in Pharaoh's corner are not such people, but we know someone who is, though. Let's see if the cupbearer suddenly remembers too in the next verse, which is: "The king's personal servant said, 'Now I remember what I was supposed to do. When you were angry with me and your chief cook, you threw us both in jail in the house of the captain of the guard. One night we both had dreams, and each dream had a different meaning. A young Hebrew who was a servant of the captain of the guard was there with us at the time. When we told him our dreams, he explained what each of them meant, and everything happened just as he said it would. I got my job back, and the cook was put to death.'" So, 2 years after Joseph told his servant to remember him, he does. We can't fault this guy too much, though, since Joseph likely needed that time of solitude and despair to further humble himself for the great role he was about to take on, God's timing and all that. Often, it seems like we're still getting shit on despite all our good works and faithfulness, but God very often is working on your reward as we speak. Waiting is a big theme in Christianity, after all. Patience is a necessary virtue. God hasn't abandoned you, just to be clear. More likely than not, Am's ensuring you can fully appreciate and handle what Am will give you. If you find yourself in such a period of waiting or tribulation, ask yourself if it is because there's something about you or the people around you who require some strengthening in areas. For Joseph, it was his arrogance and entitlement. For you, it could be that you're not empathetic or patient enough. The people in your corner need to be cut out or cut in. There's just some problem that you've been avoiding, and now it's time to face it. It can be quite difficult to face the darkness in us all, but that is why we do it with the company of others, friends, family, therapists, and most importantly, God. We can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. It's scary, but I have found that if you think of it as roller coaster scary, it's not so bad. It's almost fun. And when you're done bettering yourself and reinforcing those support beams, God more often than not will promote you in this lifetime. All who believe will get the peace they've sought in the next life, but it's of course nice when God gives you a little something for all your hard work in this life. At the very least, you'll get a strong peace of mind, but for others, because they did the inner work needed to handle it, God can now bless them with the big stuff, like with Joseph. So let's see what his big stuff was in the next verse, which is: The king sent for Joseph, who was quickly brought out of jail. He shaved, changed his clothes, and went to the king. Just to take a quick minute. Just wanted to take a quick minute to appreciate this rapid turn of events. Joseph was languishing in prison for at least 2 years, all scraggly and such. Then, just like that, Pharaoh gets them all cleaned up to have a presentable audience with him. God got things changing on a dime sometimes. Man, that was a bit of a tongue twister, wasn't it? God got things changing on a dime sometimes. Anyways, let's see how that meeting goes in the next verse, which is, the king said to him, I had a dream, yet no one can explain what it means. I am told that you can interpret dreams. Your Majesty, Joseph answered, I can't do it myself, but God can give a good meaning to your dreams. This is how we know Joseph has been thoroughly humbled. He could have just taken credit as the dream interpreter, but he gave it all to God. Clearly, those years in prison were good for him in this case. So let's see how the dream interpreting goes in the next verse, which is, the king told Joseph, I dreamed I was standing on the bank of the Nile River. I saw 7 fat, healthy cows come up out of the river, and they began feeding on the grass. Next, 7 skinny, bony cows came up out of the river. I have never seen such terrible-looking cows anywhere in Egypt. The skinny cows ate the fat ones, but you couldn't tell it because the skinny cows were just as skinny as they were before. At once, I woke up. So we get a little more detail on the cow dream, just hearing how the cows remain sickly even after eating the healthy cows. Only thing to really point out at this point. So let's move on. I also dreamed that I saw 7 heads of grain growing on one stalk. The heads were full of and ripe. Then 7 other heads of grain came up. They were thin and scorched by a wind from the desert. These heads of grain swallowed the full ones. I told my dreams to the magicians, but none of them could tell me the meaning of the dreams. Joseph replied, Your Majesty, both of your dreams mean the same thing, and in them God has shown you what he is going to do. The 7 good cows stand for 7 years, and so do the 7 good heads of grain. The 7 skinny, ugly cows that came up later also stand for 7 years, as do the 7 bad heads of grain that were scorched by the desert wind. The dreams mean there will be 7 years when there won't be enough grain. It is just as I said. God has shown that what he intends to do. For 7 years, Egypt will have more than enough grain, but that will be followed by 7 years when there won't be enough. The good years of plenty will be forgotten, and everywhere in Egypt people will be starving. The famine will be so bad that no one will remember that once there had been plenty. God has given you 2 dreams to let you know that he has definitely decided to do this and that he will do it soon. So, quite possibly the sickly cows remain sickly after eating the healthy cows as a visualization for having the famine be so bad that the good years will be forgotten like they had never existed. Just to make that metaphor more plain. And Joseph further confirms that 2 dreams were sent for emphasis on the fact that this is definitely real and happening, and also that these dreams came from God. And so the verse continues. Your Majesty, you should find someone who is wise and will know what to do, so that you can put him in charge of all of Egypt. Then have him appoint some other officials to collect 1/5 of every crop harvested in Egypt during the 7 years when there is plenty. Give them the power to collect the grain during those good years and to store it in your cities. It can be stored until it is needed during the 7 years when there won't be enough grain. This will keep the country from being destroyed because of the lack of food. So, Joseph isn't even trying to be the guy in charge of everything. He's just interpreting the dream and giving his professional opinion, exactly what he was told to do. But in doing so, he's not only showing his knowledge and wisdom, but humility as well. Pharaoh is quite impressed with this, as we'll see in the next verse, which is, "The king and his officials liked this plan. So the king said to them, 'Who could possibly handle this better than Joseph? After all, the Spirit of God is with him.' The king told Joseph, 'God is the one who has shown you these things. No one else is as wise as you or knows as much as you do. I'm putting you in charge of my palace, and everybody will have to obey you. No one will be over you except for me. You are now governor of all Egypt.'" I just want to take another quick minute to appreciate how this heathen king can recognize the power of God. You too can show the power of God to the heathens if you can listen to God as Joseph did. Careful with this ability to represent God, however. Even Pharaoh seems to think that this is more of a, this guy is very good at wielding his God's power, and not, this God must have crazy power to have followers like this. I wonder how I could get in on that. I've heard non-believers see God working in other people's lives and think God must love them, and they're just really good at this or that. You gotta be clear. No, I am a vessel, and an imperfect one at that. I am not wielding the Spirit. The Spirit is wielding me. You just have to let Am do that, and you can do all this as well. Listen for the love and act on it. You'll see God will give you the innards of a magical warrior princess, or prince too, I guess. But just a little pep talk for you. Pharaoh's definitely wise to put Joseph in charge either way. A good leader knows when to step aside and let others lead. So let's see what else he does for Joseph in the next verse, which is, "Then the king took off his royal ring and put it on Joseph's finger. He gave him fine clothes to wear and placed a gold chain around his neck. He also let him ride in the chariot next to his own, and people shouted, 'Make way for Joseph!' So Joseph was governor of Egypt. The king told Joseph, 'Although I'm king, no one in Egypt is to do anything without your permission.'" Without my permission. Sorry. So Pharaoh probably could have handled what would have just been like an increase in taxes and storing of food himself, or had someone else who was logistical enough to do it. But Joseph was so impressive, Pharaoh just let him handle everything, as many bosses before him have. The time to shine has finally come for Joseph, the final boss, if you will. We may wish we had someone like Joseph in our lives who told us plainly what we needed to do and took care of all the hard stuff for us. We may even wish for Joseph's own level of control and wisdom. Personally, I'm not a fan of all the work that comes with having to know and do everything. Like, it's fun, but then you gotta do stuff with it. There's like a responsibility. I mean, it's just exhausting, you know. But that's just me. Lucky us, Jesus can act as that guide and supporter like Joseph did. Trusting in God to do all the heavy lifting and sorting it out can feel like stumbling around in the dark sometimes, fair warning. But if we can at least remember the basics of what Jesus said, you know, actively love everyone, especially God, and know that it will work out in the end, no matter how crazy it gets, then you'll have a light to follow through the darkness, just a leaf in the stream of love. Don't worry about anything else. Just keep loving everyone and believing that God is actively and currently fixing everything. It just takes a little patience, just a little bit, or a lot. And each hurdle you get over with that light will make the next hurdle a little easier. Just focus on that light and breathe. Practice makes Perfect. But enough inspirational jumbo. Let's see what else Joseph got in the next verse, which is Joseph, not Joseph. He gave Joseph the Egyptian name Zaphanath-Paneah, which means God speaks and he lives. And he let him marry Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, a priest in the city of Heliopolis. I was practicing saying this, and I don't know why I do, because then I think I psyched myself out, and then I mess it up. I used to be really good at saying difficult things, but I put too much pressure on myself, I think. Heliopolis. I'm gonna go with that. Anyways, Joseph traveled all over Egypt. Joseph was 30 when the king made him governor, and he went everywhere for the king. So just a heads up here, there are some mostly Jewish people who say Asenath was the abandoned rape baby of Dinah and Shechem, who was adopted by an Egyptian priest. Most likely because it would make the good Jewish man's wife a good Jewish woman, but most likely this was an Egyptian woman, daughter of a heathen priest no less. But I have no doubt that Joseph's faith was strong enough to handle a heathen wife. In general, it's very cool to see how God flipped Joseph's life, from prisoner, servant, to ruler. It's not only an encouraging story for us, and it certainly helped Egypt, but it also reflects Jesus' own life as servant/prisoner to King of all kings. But that's just the majority of things. That's just kind of what the majority of things in the Bible do. It all connects back to Jesus. But let's see how the next 14 years went in Egypt for Joseph in the next verse, which is: For 7 years there were big harvests of grain. Joseph collected and stored up the extra grain in the cities of Egypt near the fields where it was harvested. In fact, there was so much grain that they stopped keeping record, because it was like counting the grains of sand along the beach. I just wanted to take this opportunity to point out that taxes were probably about 10% in those days. 1/5, for those of you who can't math, is about 20%. I'm guessing that the 20% was added, not included in the usual 10%, since that's how world leaders usually roll. So Joseph essentially tripled the taxes here. But we all know that it's a good thing, because it's good to make sure people don't die en masse because of a global disaster, or impending disaster in this case. We recognize it's the government's responsibility to ensure the health and safety of its citizens. We give up some freedom for that peace of mind. That's our social contract. But in order for the government to do that, it will need to pull a little of our resources together. Now, often the wealthy will skirt this responsibility, so the less well-off have to make up for it, and many leaders pocket the money instead of redistributing it to where it needs to go. That's its own separate issue, but here is how it's supposed to work. We all send a little off, which amounts to a lot, and we end up getting it all back when we need it. In emergencies like these, when things are about to get really bad, it's necessary to raise taxes a little more for the well-being of society as a whole. It's just right there in the Bible, that's all I'm saying. But let's see what else Joseph got into in the next verse, which is: Joseph and his wife had 2 sons before the famine began. Their first son was named Manasseh, which means God has let me forget all my troubles and my family back home, or forgetfulness. His second son was named Ephraim, which means God has made me a success in the land where I suffered, or fruitfulness. So here is a good hint that Joseph's faith remained despite marrying a heathen woman who may or may not have converted after seeing all God's power. His sons have Hebrew names instead of Egyptian ones. Joseph may have forgotten his traitorous brothers, but he hasn't forgotten his father's faith, especially after all God has given him. Even so, the names bring up an interesting point. Part of being fruitful is being able to forget past pains so as to fully move on and enjoy the fruits of your labor without the aftertaste of bitter memories. Now, I personally think that the pain makes the fruit taste sweeter and better preserved, but I also doubt we'll remember our woes in heaven, so it's a mixed bag. I simply have trouble letting go of the more egregious pains. I'm stubborn that way. It's something to be worked on, but that's something else. Let's see how that famine went in the next verse, which is, Egypt's 7 years of plenty came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was not enough food in other countries, but all over Egypt there was plenty. When the famine finally struck Egypt, the people asked the king for food, but he said, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you to do." That's some real trust in Joseph right there. Pharaoh's not doing a goddamn thing right now, except listening to the Hebrew God-man. As it should be, anyways. At the very least, always listen to God. This Pharaoh did for this specific instance, and it worked out very well for him. It's a shame his descendants didn't learn to respect God after this, but that's humans for you. Always, but not yet, what is to come. Lucky Pharaoh, he puts his trust in the right person this time. All those years of servitude and imprisonment caused Joseph to rely on God with so much humility he probably could have knocked anything out of the park. So let's see how he handles the famine in the last verse, which is, the famine became bad everywhere in Egypt, so Joseph opened the storehouses and sold the grain to the Egyptians. People from all over the world came to Egypt to buy grain because the famine was so severe in their countries. Now, there is some evidence of a great famine possibly happening in ancient Egypt, but it's hard to be sure. It probably did, if it's in the Bible like it is. I would think it'd be hard to find evidence of it, though, since Joseph apparently did such a good job managing the surplus from the good years that he had enough to feed even the neighboring countries. Ancient historians likely didn't even register that there was a famine then. It's not really that important in my opinion, though. It's true enough for me. That's what I say. That's a true enough for me kind of a thing. Anyways, what I do find a little whack is that Joseph sold the grain back to the Egyptians. Like, this dude tripled taxes so as to prepare for a famine, then expects the citizens to buy the grain back during a famine, something that would have been free to them otherwise, mind you. Like, I get charging foreigners for it since they were unprepared and didn't contribute to the reserves, but don't be making citizens buy back their own food. It's rude, okay? Especially when their sources of income have been depleted, alright? Just greedy ass humans profiting off of disasters, I swears. But that mini liberal rant is where we end this Bible study. Any thoughts or questions can be posted in the comment section, as well as any prayer requests, needy or thankful. But for now, let's look at the ones that we got, which are somewhere. Oh, where did the book go? Oh, it's over here for some reason. Okay. So, gotta praise God. Gotta ask God to fill us with presence. We're gonna ask God to forgive us of our sins. We're also going to be praying for Dr. Heiser and Trey. Dr. Heiser has cancer. Trey is his co-host on the Naked Bible podcast. We're just gonna ask for a, I mean, one's obviously got it worse than the other. Like, what's worse, having cancer or having a friend with cancer? Like, I don't know. We're also going to be praying for Mia, who still dealing with her thing. We're also going to be praying for my dad, who has pretty bad depression right now. Definitely in a low dip right now. So, going to pray for that. We're also going to pray that he and my dog get along, because it's not helping that they don't get along. You know, it's not helping his mental issues that they're not getting along. Also going to be praying for myself that the plague of my eczema goes away, because that shit's annoying. But I also wanted to thank God because I feel like I've been struggling with my own mental issues for like a while, and I've been like really worried about a lot of like sudden socializing that I have to do after spending like 5 years alone, and I feel like I've been handling it pretty good, actually. Like, I don't know if it's drugs or God. I'm gonna say it's God in this instance, but it's just I feel pretty good about things, and I just want to thank God for that. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay. Hey God, how's it going? Hope you're doing pretty good. I just want to say that you're awesome. Okay, you're like the best thing in the whole entirety of existence. Like, literally, we wouldn't even be around if it weren't for you, and we wouldn't even have any hope if it wasn't for you. So thank you for being so awesome and patient and amazing with us. I just want to ask that you could like share the wealth, you know, a little bit, you know, just like you don't have to be the only amazing person. Like, you could like remove all of the disgusting humanness in us and just put yourself in us. Like, I'm just saying, you could do that, and then we'd all be way happier, I think, you know, if it was like that. Just saying, just throwing that out there. But you know, I know it's difficult to do that. You know, our sins are quite stubborn and kind of genetically implanted in us, so you know, do the best you can with that. And you just like forgive us for what is there. Like, I know for me, I can be very arrogant. I can be very stubborn. I'm not the best at listening. I can be very bitter. I can be very impatient. I'm not the best about talking to people in a way that they like. I feel like I'm not great at like expressing my appreciation for others. I'm also not great about like mentioning that you exist to others, and like just mentioning like, hey, yeah, I'm a Christian and God's awesome, just like casually in conversation. Like, I wish I was better at that. So I pray that you forgive us for that, or forgive me for that, and help me be better about it, because that'd be cool if I could not have all of that, you know, at least like to a lesser degree. And then whatever anybody else is struggling with, help them with that too. I also want to pray for Dr. Heiser. I'm just throwing that out there. This out there again. We would prefer if he did not have cancer. You know, like, if it's time to go, it's time to go. But like, he's the cool guy, and it'd be great if he could stick around. You know, just saying. You know, he's pretty great. And I want to pray for Trey too, that he's able to be that support that Dr. Heiser needs, that they can kind of get through this together, knowing that you have their backs either way, and that you are there comforting them as they go. And I just, you know, again, it's our preference that he does not have cancer anymore, that you heal him of the cancer. That'd be cool. Just throwing that out there. I also want to pray for Mia. I pray that she gets through this legal shitstorm that she's been in. You know, I think just like supporting her the best you can, as like you know, emotionally, physically, just whatever she needs, and just help her to know that you're there with her, even though last I heard she's a little bit alone in the mountains trying to wait some stuff out. But just let her know that that you're there, and you you got her on this. Hopefully you do. I also want to pray for my dad. He has terrible depression. I'm sure you've heard. Really bad, really going through it. And I feel like he's way harder on himself than he needs to be. So I just pray that you give him that love and guidance and all the nudges that he needs to get out of that. Cause he's just so close. He's really on the edge. Like, if he goes this way, then he'll be awesome. But if he goes this way, it's gonna be really bad for everyone. So I just pray that you heal him of his brain problems. Also want to pray that he and my dog Bunny can get along better. Cause oh my God, it is so annoying watching them be like that. Oh my God, can you just talk to Bunny for me? Tell her to stop being such a little bitch. Oh my God, get over yourself. Okay, you are making everything so much worse. Just get over it. Okay, I know he's difficult. Okay, just pretend he's not. Okay, just deal with that. Also for myself, I want to that rash is starting to go away, but it's not completely gone, so just a little more. But I also want to thank you. I just feel like I've been in a really good space mentally, for the first time in my life ever, and I just feel like everything's kind of clicked into place. And maybe it was the drugs, but I feel like, I don't know, you probably did something. Because it was just really oh, okay, I guess I'm pretty much good now, I still have my issues, but it feels so much more manageable, and I feel like I got a really good peace of mind. That's the main thing, honestly. I feel like I am prepared to take on anything. Whatever you want me to do, I will do that, just as long as you give me that house. I swear to God, you better give me that house. You know what I mean. But anyways, whatever you want me to do, I will do it, because you deserve all the help you can get, and anything I can do to help, just let me know, because you're awesome, and I really appreciate everything you've done for me. And that's pretty much all I gotta say. Okay, well, I love you, bye. Amen. Cool, that's that. So yeah, pretty much done. The only thing is loud worship, which is the song underneath the quiet worship link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, just scroll up, it's right there. But highly recommend that you listen to the loud worship after this video. It's just something you can kind of dance around to, dancing in the name of the Jesus, something to get those endorphins up, to get the mood up. I like to end on a good note, a high note, But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna maybe take a nap. No, I shouldn't take a nap, but I want to take a nap, but I won't. Because I got things to do, okay? And then I'll go to sleep when I'm done with those things, okay? Okay. Well, it's cool talking to you. So long. Somebody give me money for a tablet. That'd be cool. Okay, bye.